Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's Ward 1 debate. It is the final of the 6 ward debates that ECOP has organized this election cycle. My name is Maria Adcock. I'm your MC for today. I'm a Ward 1 resident. As one of the organizers of these citywide debates, let me begin by saying that your attendance here this evening shows that you care about Burlington. Every person in this room shares one common value, that we all want what's best for our community, that we want to shape what shared life looks like in the city of Burlington for our families, our children, and our children's children. Make no mistake, how we respond to the challenges of today sends a message to the Burlington of the future. It's never more true than in this election that your vote matters. Now to the candidates. We invited all 11 Ward 1 candidates to participate in this evening's debates, and all 11 unreservedly accepted our invitation. Thank you. Candidates, your presence and your willingness to discuss the important issues that impact our city speaks volumes, and it honors the residents in this ward. So please hear our thanks for being here tonight. Now a little bit about the format. So the format for this evening is slightly different due to the number of candidates running in this ward. No time has been allocated for introduction of the candidates, and rather what we've done is provided candidate bios with their pictures, and we've handed those out tonight as by way of introduction. The candidates have been divided into 2 groups, and each group will be responding to different questions. Candidates have drawn to determine their seating position in each group and the sequence in which they will be speaking. In the first session of this evening's debate, candidates in each group will have 90 seconds to respond to pre-selected questions received from social media, print, and from candidates themselves. In the second session, the moderator will read questions received this evening by you, the audience. Candidates will also have 90 seconds to respond to these questions. Our masterful timekeeper, where's Steve, will ensure that time limits are strictly adhered to. This debate and the other 5 debates are being video recorded by Robert Gall. Robert is an award-winning documentary filmmaker and cinematographer. These debates are being posted on YouTube through ECOP's Facebook. Please join me in thanking Robert for his contribution helping making this debate available. Let me introduce the moderator for this evening's debates. Mark Carr is a longtime resident of Burlington and is a former member of City Council. Mark is the host of the public affairs program, The Issue, on the Cogeco Network on your TV. Mark has over 10 years experience as executive director of various non-for-profit organizations and has received many awards for his public service. Mark has moderated debates for several years, including provincial and municipal debates, and this year he has moderated 5 of our citywide ward debates. Please join me in welcoming Mark Carr.
First of all, I'd like to address the candidates. We're pleased you've agreed to be part of the debate forum. It will allow voters in Ward 1 to understand your platforms and priorities. Your contributions to this event are important, as Maria said. When someone decides to run as a candidate in any election, the decision is not taken lightly. Cost, time, personal, and family sacrifice are all taken into account. I applaud everyone who chooses this democratic endeavor, and all of the candidates deserve our round of applause. I feel I have to say that I do have a brother who is running in this election, not in, I guess in Burlington. Yeah, he is running in Burlington. Oakville, Halton Hills, and Milton. So, you've already been told about the guidelines. Everybody's agreed to them. To maintain a fair and productive debate, disrespectful comments or behavior will not be tolerated. If any candidate refers to another candidate directly or indirectly, I'll give the mentioned candidate 30 seconds to respond. Please hold your applause until the candidate has finished their comments, because the applause will be taken into account for the candidate's time. We want to have a respectful discourse. Everybody ready?
Let's go. Let's go.
Question number 1 to the A group. So, Kevin, just barely see you around the corner. What are your 2 highest priorities for the ward and for the city, and why?
Well, my highest priority is actually getting a grip on our traffic situation. I think about it a lot. I'm a train transportation planner, and I see a lot of things that I could do. And well, the first thing we got to do in Ward 1 is that we need to build that south service road from the Aldershot Go to King Road. And everyone knows that the King Road bridge is a little too narrow. We need to widen the King Road bridge to start. And in the long term, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take down all those utility poles on Plains Road, and we're going to have to do some widenings, give everybody some more room, and bury all those utilities, and to make it more like an urban boulevard. And of course, we have to work on our transit system. So I guess the second priority would be the transit system. And I do have some ideas about how to do that. I would like the large buses on fixed routes and fixed schedules to stay on the big roads. And in the neighborhoods where it's very low density, I would like to explore partnerships with like private ride share services like RideCo or Lyft to feed the main lines. And I think that would be far more efficient than running large buses for neighborhoods. So that's it.
Okay, this question is for Taylor of Group B. So what would you like to see council do less of, and what would you like to see them do more of?
Well, I would like to see council start making decisions that allow us to have a more efficient transit system. I believe that working on our traffic system, as Kevin said there, is important because it does affect everybody, whether you take transit or not. I think that city council should specifically look at intensification and growth towards 6-story buildings. And I believe that city council should look at more effective ways of spending the tax dollars we already have. Thank you.
Okay, Jason, what are the 2 highest priorities for the ward in the city, and why?
Thank you. Really, my top 2 priorities are about you folks. Okay? We need to give a lot more respect, particularly to our seniors. We have 1 senior center in the city. It's beyond capacity. It's been that way for at least 5 years. Oakville has 3 or 4 with the same demographics. Why are we asking our seniors that we want to stay in their homes to go to the other end of the city to participate in programming for seniors? I want to put a senior center at Aldershot Arena, and for that matter, I want to put one at Skyway Arena as well. We own the property, we own the infrastructure. We just need to put some planning and some work into bringing the front wall forward to designate that area for seniors. We need to respect the environment, whether that's with restricting, stopping the quarry development as it is currently set up, whether it's moving traffic faster, out of our neighborhoods. You know, we don't need them to drive faster, we need them to drive steady and to keep moving. If we can synchronize the lights in Hamilton, why can't we synchronize them in Burlington? Right? Let's protect the environment and our community for tomorrow, just like our parents did.
Okay, candidates, I screwed up. And so I'll take the hit for that. And let's go to Judy, and she will answer what are the 2 highest priorities for the ward and the city, and why.
Thanks, Mark. One of the things that we need to do is to manage the growth and change that's happening throughout the city, both in downtown Burlington and also in Aldershot. We need to get ahead and work with people who are doing the planning for the developers, and we need to be able to get the community input. One of the things that I would like to do is establish a community improvement plan as defined by the Ontario Planning Act that will build on the great work that the Plains Road Vision Committee has already done in this community, and it will provide a vision for all of Aldershot, which includes the Aldershot Mobility Hub that is coming in the GO train station. As well as growth and with change, we also need to put right with that, moving along like 2 oxens. We need to look at our transit, and we also need to look at our traffic issues. I think Aldershot is going to be in a pilot project for a new traffic calming project, and it is going to be looking at measuring the Bluetooth that goes along, of the cars that go along Plains Road, and we'll be aligning the traffic and the street lights to go ahead with the type of flow that we have on a day-to-day basis. But we can't do growth and change without transit and traffic control.
Thank you, Judy. What are the 2 highest priorities for the ward and for the city, and why?
Now that they've all stolen my thunder. Okay, what I hear at the doors more than anything is people, especially in Aldershot, they want people places, and they want people places that, of course, the grocery store is #1. We want things like that. They don't want the height. And what I'm hearing more often than not is they want a place where they can go to the hardware store. They want places where they can go out for a dinner. And these are the things, and people say to me, what do you want? I said, I want people places. I want the community to feel like a community, because this is where I feel that we're falling short. Because people are just seeing all the infrastructure, the buildings, and they're not feeling a human touch anymore. And I think we need to get back to that. I've spoken to Larry Reynolds about perhaps partnering up, school boards. I've been with the school board for many years, so what you want to look at is what can you do to partner up with school boards with the use in the community. Let's put a dome over Aldershot High School. These are things that are easy, that are workable, that should be done. As far as the city itself, I mean, again, it's the growth and sticking to the official plan, because this is what has not been happening. And I understand OMB interferes with that, but certainly we need to look at that. And of course, the transit. I'm hearing, how Tyendega, their kids have to go down to Aldershot. They can't get back. So there's things like this where we have to sit down and fight through the detail, because really the devil is always in the detail. It's not in the big picture.
Thank you, Arlene. Vince, 2 highest priorities for the ward and for the city, and why?
Okay, so actually the same priority for the city and the ward is its intensification, and associated with that is traffic congestion problems, affordable, accessible housing for seniors on fixed incomes, and millennials buying their first homes. These are all tied together. A lot of people are against development because all we've seen in the city is development done poorly. Development done in a way that only benefits the developers and leaves the rest of our community with long-term problems. All right, so I'm about smart development. I'm also about consensus-based decision-making. I will say no to changes to the official plan and zoning until at least 2/3 affected residents and businesses say yes. Okay, so there's been some misinformation on that about me, in that I'm in favor of tall buildings. I support intensification that's done in a way that it creates affordable, accessible housing, improves public transit, that sort of thing. I'm also in favor of the Aldershot quarry is another important issue to me, and I have a solution that everybody wins on that, which is relocate the quarry to another location. What they're mining is actually not a rare resource. It's very widely available. So a win for them would be to relocate to another location where they would have an increase in the amount of reserve, and it would protect a pristine forest with endangered species from getting clobbered, and also protect the health and safety of residents that would be affected by it. If I'm running out of time. Okay.
And we'll go to Group B, and your question, Andrew, what would you like to see council do less of, and what would you like to see council do more of? And I'd like to remind the candidates that they don't always have to use the full 90 seconds. However,
Thank you. Well, for me, less of would be less disagreeing and more working together. Because we've got problems in the city, and we need a council that works together to solve problems. The two highest priorities to solve would be growth. How do we deal with growth going forward? And how do we solve the congestion that we experience as a result of that growth? So for me, those are the two issues that come before. And so we need a council, we need councillors that listen more, that learn, and that can communicate. And I can do all three of those things. And I will work with the new city council as a team to solve problems. Thank you.
Gary.
Yeah, same question?
Same question.
Okay.
What would you like to see council do less of? What would you like to see council do more of?
It is certainly with the 7 councilors and the mayor, we're going to be coming at this from different experiences and backgrounds. And so to all come in, with the same philosophy is not likely going to happen too often. But it's a matter of if you have an attitude of being agreeable, then a lot of things can be worked out, and that's certainly a requirement for everybody, whether it's on the mayor or the councillor. One of the things that I see quite often is the question of development and high-rise and condos and apartments. And I've talked to quite a few folks in those apartments and condos, and interestingly enough, I find that a lot of them are really downsizing from homes in Burlington. And there's also some that are downsizing from homes in Mississauga or Toronto. And they are choosing to stay here, they really want to stay here. The interesting thing about that is that when they're living here, they're probably not traveling in peak traffic times. So hey, we get the economic benefits, and we're not really seeing the impact on our traffic at all. And I think that's something that we have to keep in mind. Just because we're adding new buildings doesn't mean that we're always going to be adding new traffic issues.
Okay, Renee, what would you like to see council do less of, and what would you like to see council do more of?
So I would like to see council do more citizen engagement. I think that in many cases when we have an opportunity to have a meeting, we were actually supposed to have a meeting at the Aldershot Arena last week on Wednesday, and it was quickly canceled for some reason. But what happens at these meetings is that the citizens don't really get to engage with what's going on. They're there really to listen. And I think we really need to have an opportunity for citizens to voice their opinion on development, on projects that are being brought forth by either the city council or the planning department. so that they can actually have some input before a decision is made. And that would be a very positive way for the city to grow. Everybody would have an input, and I think that in those cases, people would feel that they've been engaged in the process and they understand why things are going on. In terms of what I'd like to see less of is, I think what ends up happening at council is that we have fragmentation in terms of philosophies, and I think we need to get people working in the same direction, because when we're working in the same direction, we're going to do better for our community and for the city of Burlington.
Mark. Thanks, Mark. And thank you everyone for coming out tonight. It's great to see such a full house for this. It's simple. Council needs to work more closely with the people and not with the developers. It's as simple as that. Better, smarter growth, better, smarter engagement with citizens. I get it. Every politician has to pay lip service. It's simply called a consultation. But as outside influences are there, as a councillor you have to listen. But we need to put supports in place that ensures that we improve citizen engagement. Some politicians, some candidates, they choose to work with the developers, that's their choice. I know there's a need to stay in touch. That's plans, that's progress. But we get into dangerous conflict of interest issues when we work directly with developers. And councillors, we're elected by you. When I am elected, I will work for you, not for the developers. Kelvin.
So a lot of people have said the same sort of things, but I do like to reiterate that we do need to engage our citizens more. Listen to the people that elect us. The current council has got the reputation, whether it's in this ward or other wards, that they haven't been heard. Their interests have not been heard, and it's the developers' interests that are heard. But I understand that we do need to find a balance between the developer interests and then what the citizens want. We just need to engage the citizens and bring it all together and at least let you guys know early in the process what's happening and get your feelings about developments and then bring that back and work out a solution for everybody. We should be the liaisons. I mean, developers are building this community, they're investing in our community, so we need to work with them. In terms of less, I think we could have less tax increases. I have a business on the street. I pay a lot of property tax in the city. So when I see a 4.5% increase when inflation is only 2%, I think that needs to be looked at. I've talked to a lot of seniors that are in their homes, and they really feel those tax increases. Maybe we should look at programs where we can, for qualified seniors, the tax increases can be frozen so they can remain in their homes where they've been for sometimes 50 years. So maybe less tax increases.
Okay, this question goes back to Group A and Jason. It is for you. The official plan has been passed and sent to Halton Review for approval and cannot be taken back. How would you make changes to the official plan to achieve your vision of Burlington?
Thank you. Really what we're talking about is an official plan for how we're going to be moving forward. It is not something that has been written in stones. It's on paper. It's electronic. We can make amendments as we go if we need to when we come across issues that perhaps weren't thought about, or that perhaps situations have changed, or it doesn't fit in our exact neighborhood and on our street. It doesn't apply. It doesn't work with the specific piece of land that is being talked about. So the official plan is what guides development and the direction of our community. We need that document. We need to make sure that we're holding developers accountable to it and that we're holding the line on that official plan. We don't need development that does not fit into our communities today. We need to be looking forward, yes, but we also have to understand where we came from, how we became such a great community and such a great place to be. We don't need to make sure that the developers are running amok with things. So yes, we can change it. It's a living, breathing document that can be changed as we need to make changes to it to reflect what you and I want. Thank you.
Judy.
Thank you. Yes, the official plan has gone to the region, but I agree with Jason totally. It doesn't mean it's set in stone, and there's a lot that we can do to make it fit our community. I believe I'm going back to the community improvement plan, which a lot of communities have. I've worked in the BIA office, and I'm looking at other BIAs across the province. They all have community improvement plans, which includes business, not-for-profit, and the community. So if we all work together and create a shared vision, we will be able to mold that official plan to what we want to have in Aldershot. But don't forget, Ward 1 is 3 distinct communities. It's Maple, it's Aldershot, and it's Tyne-Vega. And we need to have, one of the things that I want to do is have advisory councils in each one of those communities so it can reflect the nature of those communities. I was just talking to the people down in Maple. They feel a little forgotten and they want to go back to Ward 2, and that would be one of my first priorities.
Thank you, Judy. Arlene. And if anyone would like the question repeated, please just indicate it to me.
Okay, no, I'm fine. Certainly the official plan has not been accepted by the region just yet, and there is a fair amount of flexibility. And going through the document, you see that there's up to 3 years where you can go back and modify the zoning. And I think when you start talking about intensity and you start talking about affordable housing, I think there's different ways to get more affordable housing in there so that residents can stay in their homes, so that they can modify those appendage buildings and or make more, I would think, duplexes, triplexes, and I think there needs to be more flexibility in the zoning for that, because people like to stay in their home. They shouldn't have to leave. If they've got a large home with a large lot, we should be more creative there. But also in the mobility hubs, I think where we really need to make sure is that we're making sure it is a sustainable community, because what I'm seeing along Plains Road is live work. I'm seeing spaces, commercial spaces that are too small to house anything. So I think it's really important that we get the next steps perfect, because we aren't going to get another kick at the can.
Thank you, Arlene. Vince?
Okay, so the issue here is, the official plan, in my opinion, the affected residents and businesses weren't empowered properly during that decision-making process. And so what happened is unwanted change was imposed on people against their will. Our elected representatives went through the process of looking like they were listening to us, but effectively they went and did what they wanted to do anyway. And we've had development imposed on us that we don't want. So the growth targets that we're supposed to meet for 2031, we've hit those growth targets already. There's no hurry to impose development on people, according to the plan. It's time to go back and revisit this. So the first thing we need to do is we need to have a multimodal transportation plan in place that's going to solve gridlock and traffic congestion problems across the city first. That's the first thing. Then the next thing we have to do is then the developers have to develop around that plan. And since improved transportation is going to increase property values, that increase in property values belongs to the city, not the developers. So the developers should be paying for the public transit infrastructure that's associated with the new plan, so that basically when they pay their fair share. So we need something like they say that downtown Burlington is a mobility hub. It's not. Mobility hub scales up to move thousands of people per hour. So first we have to have a plan of how to move people from the Burlington GO train station to Spencer Smith Park, and then all the development along Brand Street has to accommodate that, and all the developers have to pay their own fair share.
Thank you. Well, I was looking for the official plan, and being an urban planner, I noticed that the transportation transportation plan is missing. So we have to fix that. It needs a transportation component, right? The other thing is, well, I've been talking to a lot of you. People have been talking about how come we don't have a grocery store in the west part of Aldershot. Well, we can actually make that part of the zoning. So you can actually adjust the zoning and the regulations to allow or encourage people to have larger stores. So we can do that. And the other thing was, we were talking about mobility hubs. I don't see the justification for having a mobility hub centered around the bus terminal on John Street. I think it's a very small bus station, and it does not move thousands of people per hour like GO trains do. So, and it's already the densest part of the city. So I don't see the justification for having that, because if you have that designation, that gives developers the justification to add more density, to add higher buildings, saying, well, it's a mobility hub. So I don't think we need that downtown.
Okay, we'll move on to the B group, and this is to Andrew. Over-intensification, quote unquote, has been used by many candidates in this election. Many go on to say, quote, they'll support growth. What is your ideal growth for Burlington, and where should that growth take place?
Okay, so over-intensification, to me, I support growth, but smart growth that has capacity in place to handle the increased growth. And we can see that downtown, there's congestion in different areas of the city. There's not the capacity in place to handle the growth. So the growth is happening too fast for that capacity. So you have to, in each of these mobility hubs, you have to make sure that there's capacity in place to support the growth that is being proposed. You cannot let timelines be dictated by development proposals. You've got to step back and say, first, we're going to solve the congestion, we're going to solve the pacing of growth, the intensification of growth first. Then we'll look at development proposals. So that would be my way of dealing with intensification. I like the new official plan. I like the detailed planning, right down to the planning precincts. You can go in there, you can look at different regions of the city, and you can see exactly what the zoning is for there. And so planning ahead is good planning. So you want intensification to occur with good planning. So I support the new.
And thank you, Andrew. Sorry, that's off. We'll move on to Gary. And as I say, if anyone wants the question repeated, just ask me.
Okay, with respect to the official plan and with respect to traffic involved in the official plan, one of the things that's really intrigued me for many years is when you're going eastbound past Spencer Smith Park, suddenly that 2 lanes eastbound becomes 1 lane eastbound. And I'm thinking, okay, now maybe that was great 25, 30 years ago, but my goodness, when you look at the traffic coming down Maple, turning left onto Lakeshore, when you look at the people coming in from Lakeshore eastbound, it's just truly congestion. And then all of the new condos that have been built east of Brant Street, my goodness, those folks want to get home at night. So that's something that I don't think is going to be a huge dollar item, but my goodness, it would really improve a lot of things in that way. And that's kind of my approach to the official plan. The official plan certainly is a work in progress. And we and the council and the residents learn as they're going along, and there probably will be adjustments to how that all works out in the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Renee, I'll just read the question again. Over-intensification has been used by many candidates in this election. Many go on to say they support growth. What is your ideal growth for Burlington and where should it take place?
Well, you know, growth is something that we've all talked about. But one of the things that I've noticed when I look at this map, which Rick Craven sent out, was 16 projects already proposed for southern Aldershot. And this one doesn't even include the project that's south of Havendale. And each of these projects, in most of the cases, are trying for some adjustments to the bylaws so that they can build their particular property. And I think one of the things that we need to look at is making sure that projects adhere to the bylaws under the official plan, and that the building department is not making adjustments to bylaws to allow builders to move forward. I think we've seen this happen in 3 or 4 different projects that have already been approved right now, and citizens don't get an opportunity to engage with the city to talk about those adjustments. It's basically an opportunity for the city to tell you what's happening, and you don't have an opportunity to have your own input. So as far as I'm concerned, we really need to have more input. That has to be the #1 objective on all of these developments. The other thing that I'm concerned with is property that's actually been zoned to be developed and is not getting developed. I know Paletta has a big opportunity. Oh, okay. I'm finished. You're good.
Sorry, we'll put back.
3 seconds.
Hurry.
Okay, no problem. Paletta has a large amount of property just north on Waterdown Road. He's been sitting on it for probably 15 years. He said they're going to build 171 houses and 400 townhouses, and that would help the growth in all.
Okay, thank you. It is so Marty, over-intensification has been used by many candidates in this election. Many go on to say they support growth. What's your ideal growth for Burlington, and where should that growth take place?
Well, we've all heard the words intensification, but really we have to differentiate that. There's over-intensification and there's intensification, because truthfully, intensification, if done properly, is not a bad thing. But an intensification plan has to include a combination of a commercial plan and a residential plan. I've spoken extensively on behalf of the Chamber on the benefits of a well-planned out community. You build great places for people to live, business will follow. People will work where they live, people will live where they work. Benefit of that is you increase your property tax base, you cut down on traffic because people are working in closer proximity. And then as far as where we're going to intensify, the important thing is there's a term called the missing middle. And if you want an example of the missing middle, look at Mississauga. It's either high-rise, 25 stories or more, or it's single-family homes. And what we're in danger of with this plan is the missing middle. Missing middle is townhouses, 4-story condo buildings or apartment buildings, and semi-detached. They will fit more closely into the communities. They won't negatively affect the communities like a 14 or 15 or 20-story high-rise will in your backyard. So when you're thinking about intensification, it's a commercial plan, it's a residential plan, and focus on the missing middle. Thank you.
What we have to remember is the old official plan was about a 20-year-old document, and in that time, a lot has changed in our community. Burlington has reached build out, meaning we can't build out any longer. We are landlocked by the green belt. So in order for our city to grow, we do have to grow from within. So we don't want to go back and rewrite the entire official plan. It took them 6 years to write the new one that's sitting at the region right now. Sure, we can add some tweaks to it. There's some things, with the downtown, with certain zoning areas and heights and limits that need to be reviewed. As Kevin pointed out, the traffic study, we absolutely need that in the downtown before we go any further. But I do support some form of intensification at all the GO station hubs. We have the transit there, the GO station hubs are there, the highway access is there. If we need to grow as a city, that's the type of areas that we should be growing. And we've identified those 3 GO station hubs as mobility hubs in the city. And as Marty said, those areas need to be sustainable communities. We need proper businesses, food operations, people, employment, all in one place, so that they have to rely a lot less on the automobile to get around. A lot of those families are potentially going to be single-car families and commuting to the big city on the GO station. So,
thank you. Now we're back to Taylor.
For sure. Over-intensification is certainly a problem when we're looking at Burlington nowadays. I think that we need to go look back at the official plan, and as my opponents have said, we should tweak it minorly. I think we should have limits put in to allow for 6-story growth around Ward 1, because quite honestly, we're going to grow in population over the next 10, 20, and 100 years, and who wouldn't want to live in Ward 1? I am totally committed to open communication and input by the community, and don't think that we should ever say no to any group, person, or association that comes forward with significant concerns about our growth. And I agree that we do need to build up and rather than out, and definitely look forward to the growth that we see in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And this question goes to Judy to respond to. First, the Tyndale Environmental Coalition has been frustrated with City Council. How would you assist TAC in achieving their objectives in the planned expansion of the Meridian Quarry?
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate TAC for their community involvement in a very important subject. They have given a lot of their time, their own personal resources to draw attention to a very important project. They have worked tirelessly to bring this to the attention of the entire Burlington community and to the Ontario government. So I would like to, first of all, can we give them a round of applause for that? Secondly, I would say that from the very beginning, I've said that this needs to go back to the Ontario government. This license is dated to 1978. Certainly environmental quotas have changed since then. We need to sit down and talk with Meridian about changing how they're going to operate in that area. We need to also invite the citizens, and TAC is a great example of how we can lead in this area. So I'm going to keep this one short.
Arlene.
Sorry, could you just repeat?
I certainly will. The Tyndale Environmental Coalition has been frustrated with City Council. How can you assist TAC in achieving their objectives in the planned expansion of Meridian Quarry?
Okay. I've met with the people from TAC, and I agree with Judy. They work very hard, and they are not giving up, and full kudos to them on that, because that's not an easy proposition. Unfortunately, I don't know that council proper really has any jurisdiction on it other than to assist them in going to the Ontario government. And having been involved as a trustee and dealing with the Ministry of Education, I've found that dealing with ministries is not always an easy go. So most certainly it needs to go back there, but it would seem to me that when you're going at it, you need to hit several ministries. I know it's an old license. I know that there have been some provisions given to Meridian that they now have. There are other requirements that they are systematically going through. What I'm looking at, I'd like to see some kind of a concerted effort to go to several ministries at the same time, and if possible, get the federal levels in there. And I think this really is a three-pronged thing. It needs to be city, it needs to be higher government, it needs to be the citizens. And certainly with Meridian, because they don't seem that they're obstinate, they seem that they want to please, but they do have that license, and I think, to just for the ministry to say no, they have to be prepared to fight a lawsuit. So if the city's going to get involved, we have to understand that there's going to be costs associated with that as well.
Yes.
So, I've been involved with this issue since the beginning, as soon as it went public. As soon as I heard about the collaborating endangered pristine forest with endangered species and a noise and dust problem for residents and neighbors, I came out to every public meeting. I've asked hard questions. I've donated money. I tried to turn it into an election issue during the provincial election, and I'm responsible for probably more than 300 signatures on the petition. So this is my issue. I'm looking for a win-win outcome. The quarry operator is acting legally. They've got a 25-year reserve there, and the future is that in 25 years from now, the Not In My Backyard group is going to be stronger than what it is now. So a win outcome for them would be to find a new location. That process takes about 10 to 15 years. We should have started that process 5-10 years ago. If we had done that, we'd be looking at relocating it. The Queenston Shale deposit that they're mining is not a rare resource. It runs all the way from upstate New York to Owen Sound, goes as far east as Orangeville. Surely there's another place where we can locate that. It's not going to clobber a pristine forest with endangered species and subject the neighborhood to 25 years of noise and dust. So the political will has been lacking. That's what the problem is. So I would propose that we go to the Minister of Health and try to get them assistance for a ministerial zoning order on health issues. Go to the Ministry of Natural Resources and get their help on protecting endangered species at risk. And the ministerial zoning order would then allow the quarry operator to rezone with some other type of land use which is compatible with the neighborhood and doesn't create health and safety problems. And then the money that they make off of that would help to pay for the renovation.
Thank you. Okay. We can move the microphone back to
The mic is very warm.
It's going to get hotter as the night goes on.
Well, I agree with Vince about the political will. That's really what's been lacking, is the political will. We've seen in other cases, like most recently in the Flamborough quarry case, there was a lot of political will there, and that project was stopped. When I was involved with the whole Mid-Peninsula Corridor proposal, when they wanted the province wanted to build a highway from Fort Erie up and basically dump the traffic into Burlington and go through the escarpment. There was a lot of political will to stop that, and I was one of the people on the advisory committee for that. I was the vice chair, and we put the political pressure on, and it got stopped. So that's really what's been lacking. And I agree with a lot of what's been said. I believe that if that license had expired and they tried to apply for it today, I don't think they would be able to get that license. Knowing what we know today about health effects of dust and endangered species and all these different things, all these different issues. So I think what Tech has been asking for has been pretty reasonable for most of what they're asking, like a salamander study, having peer reviews. I think it's all entirely reasonable. So I would support all those things and push them at council.
Jason, how can you assist TAC, the Tyndale Environmental Coalition, in achieving their objectives in the planned expansion of the Meridian Quarry?
Thank you. The way I think that this needs to go forward is two-pronged. One, requiring through the ministries, both of health and natural resources forestry, to bring the permit up to today's standards. Not something that's 43 years old, 44 years old now. The world's changed. Tyndale has changed. Burlington's changed. Everything has changed substantially since that was issued. Heck, I was, 7 when that was issued? I've changed a little bit too. It just happens. I think the second approach is something that Mike Wallace mentioned last night, is to make the developer whole. Making Meridian realize that as a business entity, they're going to make X number of dollars according to their business plan. If we stop them, there's going to be a suit. So if we can make them whole to go somewhere else and line another place, which I'm sure Vince can help them locate. Let's do that, right? Let's rezone the land to be parkland. Let's get Vince on the committee to get that working for them, right? Which frees them up. That also gives Vince another 30 seconds because I referred to him.
And thank you, Jason. Friendly comments? Okay. All right, let's move on to, first time we've had that. Let's move on to Gary to respond to this question. Burlington residential taxes have increased 4.3% last year alone. What programs or services would you cut to achieve a lower percentage increase or decrease in residential taxes?
It'd be a fair question, and I don't have the answer to, is if taxes have gone up, is that because our assessment has gone up? And how much of that is due to that? Because certainly all of us here that are homeowners have seen our values increase dramatically, and the assessments have gone up. So I don't know how much of that is due to the assessment. Cutting out unnecessary things. I've seen a few things go on in the city. Let's take the pier for an example. It was really not thought out clearly. I think they should have had a little bit more due diligence as to what the costs are going to be. And certainly picking the lowest bidder was, that may seem like a nice, easy thing to do. But unfortunately, this bidder didn't have the skill set and the experience to deal around water, whereas the second lowest bidder did. So there's, I think that's really a matter of having a more competent organization down at City Hall, and maybe a better skill set within the mayor and council.
Yeah. Thank you, Renee. Read the question again. Burlington residential taxes have increased 4.3% last year alone. What programs or services would you cut to achieve a lower percentage increase or a decrease in residential taxes?
Well, I think you need to look at the cost of the pension plan for the city of Burlington. We have a pension plan that is growing dramatically, and there's an unfunded liability there. And I think we need to have an audit of that growing liability to see whether it's sustainable. One of the problems with these types of pension plans is that it continues to balloon at a faster rate than you can contribute to it. And so I would definitely want to have an audit and see where we are in terms of liability, and then address that to try to help reduce the taxes.
In all due respect to the question, without having an opportunity to review the budget and look at where expenses are allocated, it's very difficult to say what you could cut. I think there might be a lot of people offended and a lot of people happy, so it's not a win-win situation. So really, what areas we need to expand in and what can we live without is a question we also have to ask. The other part of it is development taxes. So I've made reference in my earlier comments about a smart commercial as well as a residential development plan. If the commercial end of it is done, you increase your tax base with business taxes, because we know they pay a significant amount of money more than a typical residential tax base. So we grow our commercial tax base, we may compensate enough that we don't have to worry about a tax increase much more than beyond the cost of living. As a matter of fact, the only thing I would support with the cost of living at maximum. But also, let's not forget about our good friend, the developers. Currently, development charges are being reviewed in accordance with provincial regulations. So my first priority, going to city finance, is take a good look at development charges and see if there's an opportunity there to increase. So long and short of it is, hopefully we don't have to cut taxes.
I kind of touched on this issue already, but I thought it was 4.5%, but I guess it was 4.3 last year, so apologies for the few points off. A lot of people that I speak to at the doors are confused. We're seeing all of this development, and we know development produces a lot of development dollars for the city. We see heights increasing. Each floor produces a certain amount of tax dollars for the city. Most of us seem a little bit uncomfortable with this growth that's happening. It's a big topic of discussion in the city. And then we get a property tax increase. So I can understand the frustration with those people that, cannot afford to pay these taxes with what's going on in the city. So, also as a business owner, like I said, I pay my fair share, and I would like to get on council and go line by line, look for efficiencies in the budget before I start talking about cutting programs and whatnot. So, yeah, I would need a little bit more education on the budget, but definitely I would like to go through it. I feel like I'm a fiscally responsible business owner, and that type of, I can be an asset to council by looking at efficiencies. So, thank you.
I'll keep this one short. My first action, if elected to council, will be to put forward a motion to cut something that I think we can all agree in this room should be cut, and that's council salary by 10%. Seriously. We can take that cut and use it on housing. We can take that cut and use it on transit. We don't need that extra money. You don't need to be putting it in politicians' pockets. Thank you.
Andrew, I'll repeat the question. What programs or services would you cut to achieve a lower percentage increase or a decrease in residential taxes?
Okay, I think you mentioned a 4.3% residential tax increase last year. So, number one, I would go for a review of spending portfolio, item by item, to see, check against the priorities. Keeping in mind Ward 1 priorities and city priorities. I support growth, so I would look for opportunities to increase revenue streams through that growth. I would work with, reach out to other levels of government to seek funding streams that may be available, options. I would encourage staff to reach out and see if there are other streams of funding that was available to support city initiatives. Further, I would reach out to the Greater Toronto, Hamilton, Waterloo area, and I would seek planning that is done on that basis. When you look at transit, I'm sure if we build up transit and do planning on a regional basis, you're going to find efficiencies and you're going to find opportunities to reduce costs. And I feel that you need to be competitive with your neighboring municipalities. And I think these competitive pressures, when you look at Oakville, you look at Milton, you look at Halton Hills, those pressures, we need to compare ourselves with them to make sure that we have those pressures, competitive pressures, so that tax increases are with those pressures, are competitive with our neighbors. Thank you.
Spend time writing out the question. Okay, this one is for Arlene to respond to first. Simple question, how would you improve our transit system?
The transit, I know, is being looked at again right now, and so I'd be waiting for the next plan to come out from the transit director to see what they have there. Certainly I'm hearing about complaints, and I hear it right through the ward. So I think in my world, We need something that loops through neighborhoods, that brings people somehow back out to that main corridor. I think in mobility hubs, we're going to have, again, same type of thing, similar to, am I looking at something?
No, I'm saying, don't look at me,
Oh.
right there.
I can look wherever I want.
Yes,
Certainly what I'm hearing is the shortage of transit, the timing of transit. So I think we really need to grasp of what kind of numbers we have, where people want to go, and what the frequency is. I mean, we have the same problem with schools. We can't get kids, and then there's consortiums and all these things. And I think sometimes too, these are areas we haven't explored. What can we team up with school systems, because they have buses sitting for several hours a day. I don't see why there aren't these little tiny things, bit by bit, that we can chew away to find efficiencies. And it's really what it's about, but you need to have the data, because the data drives what's needed. And you know, it's hard to say when there's one person way back in a neighborhood, how do you get that person up? Then you need something on demand. Because unless you have collective numbers, it just doesn't make sense to have to spend money needlessly. So you have to be efficient with the money
Okay,
and
thank
efficient
you,
with the money.
Arlene. I let you go for 5 seconds. Vince.
So the first thing we need to do is we need to find out what exactly are our transportation problems. That's never been looked at adequately. So we do need to have a study to find out where are people moving to? Where are they coming from? Where are they going to? Why are they traveling? Where they're going? I think so. That once we have the data on that, then we have to look at what's the best transportation system, that our multimodal transportation system that meets that need. How many people are we moving around? So we need to look at things like right-sized buses. There's technology coming in this area. Self-driving vehicles are here now. It's only a matter of time until they're on our streets. Okay, so we should be looking for planning and anticipating that technology change. I would also like to see no fare public transit for students and seniors. Now, how to pay for that would be to make people who drive cars pay for public transit in a way. What I'd be going after is I'd be going after non-resident commuters that are using our residential streets to cut through Burlington's. So I'm talking about smart poles. We need to detect where people are coming into our community. They're going across Lakeshore, they're leaving our community. If they do it within 15, 20 minutes, they never came here to visit, work, or shop here. We know if they came here, they just use our roads as a throughfare, and they're not paying for those roads. So the money that we could get from that, I'm looking for revenue neutral. Also, we should talk to at-risk for student, Uber, and Lyft, and look at those companies, what services they're providing, and see if we can integrate it into our system. Thank you.
And the microphone back here to Kelly.
Oh, thank you. Well, this is my wheelhouse. I was an analyst at Burlington Transit. So, there's a lot of things that we can do to improve transit. Well, I'd like to talk about Handyvan first. Handyvan, a lot of people don't really know too much about it. It's a door-to-door service for people with disabilities. But one of the big problems is that it's operated only within the city of Burlington. So if you have an appointment outside the city of Burlington, you have to transfer to a neighboring system. So I find that troubling, especially I'm thinking about disabled people transferring systems in the middle of winter, at a municipal boundary. So we need to stop doing that. We don't live our lives by municipal boundaries, so we should really try to do our transportation the way we live. So we need to do that. But we need to also coordinate our transit, our normal, regular transit at a regional level as well. So we need to move towards the model of regional transit. It was actually first promised in 1974 by Bill Davis. It still hasn't happened. But we need to move towards that model. And like I said before, I'd like some partnerships with ride-sharing services to do on-demand services to feed the main lines. And I do support the idea of having either deeply discounted fares or free fares for seniors during off-peak times, because the buses are fairly empty during those times. Thank you.
Sorry, read the question again. Okay. How would you improve our transit system?
Thank you. ways that we can improve the transit system. Bigger buses on the bigger routes, little tiny buses on the routes that are not getting the same ridership, whether it's at off-peak hours or just routes that aren't as active as number 1 coming down Plains Road here. The other thing that I think we need to take a look at is finding out exactly where people are coming from and going to when they get on and off the bus. Just because you get on the bus on Plains Road at Howard Road, that doesn't mean that's where you're coming from, right? You might be coming up from Darrell Drive, walking 2 blocks to get up there. We need to find that out so that we can get those on-demand busing systems in place to bring you up to the 1 or the 1X going along Plains Road. If we don't know where you're coming from, how do we know where we need to be, right? So once we can identify the proper busing, the proper locations for the busing, and make sure that we have the right costs on the busing, I don't see any reason why we can't have free riding for seniors during peak times and during off-peak times. I don't think we should really tell them when they can and can't take the bus. That's not right either. Okay, thank you.
Well, okay. So it's difficult coming at the end of this because everybody has really great ideas. I want to say though, I've lived in Burlington and Ward 1 for 36 years, and Burlington has never taken transit seriously. I heard a former mayor once say, everybody's got 2 cars in the laneway, in their driveway, so we don't really need transit. This transit has been going on as a deficit for decades, and it's time we grew up and took responsibility for our transit system. I agree totally with the handy van comments were made by Kevin. My mother lived with me the last 5 years of her life, and we actually got kicked off handy van because we tried to go into Hamilton and tried to use another system. So I certainly understand the problems that people have with that, and we need to improve our north-south systems. There's nothing there, and if people are coming down, like someone mentioned, students coming down from Ty and David to go to school in Aldershot or to go to special programs, they can't make it, and it denies a lot of people access to those programs. So if we design an effective, attractive, timely, mobile-friendly transit system with loops into the lower communities, we will get more traffic off the streets, and more people in Burlington will use transit, and we have to connect it to the GO system.
Okay, this question begins with Renee, and what will you do to secure LaSalle Park for the city of Burlington?
Maybe I'll trade water now. Well, I think the reality is that it's belonged to, or been managed by Burlington for, I think, 99 years or so. I think that in reality it does belong to Burlington, and I don't think it's going to change very quickly. I used to play hockey down at the Turtle Pond at LaSalle with my brothers, and so. No, I don't think we don't even have to worry about losing it. I think that's just a lot of hot air that's being blustered around.
Marty. My kids weren't allowed to go to the Turtle Pond. Before I answer that question, I have to do a bit of a retraction on my last one. I said that I wasn't in favor of cutting taxes. I meant I wasn't in favor of cutting expenditures. So I heard it go from the crowd, but not cutting taxes. Buying LaSalle Park, boy. You know what, it really comes down to negotiation. And I mean, that's the world that I live in every day. And there's no such thing as no deal. And I just think that from the efforts that have been made in the past, they haven't been sincere enough, they haven't been well planned, they haven't been well thought of. What those plans are right now, that's difficult to say because there's a lot of people at City Hall that have smarter minds than I do about the details of the ownership between, or the relationship between the city, our city, and the city of Hamilton. So I think it's a priority. We just spent $4 million on a wave break. So if we're going to spend $4 million on a wave break, sorry folks, decision's made, then it should be on property that we own. So the effort should be made, has to be made, and again, it just comes down to making it a win-win situation for both sides. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Marty, and I'm also a business owner, like I said, and I negotiate on a daily basis. I would love to walk into Hamilton and negotiate that property. It's ours, it's on our property, we maintain it. I believe we pay them $67,000 a year in leases just to keep it, and we maintain it. So maybe we should bill them for the maintenance fees at $67,000 a year, and then maybe they'll give it to us. We just invested in the wave break. You know, whether it was popular or not, it's done deal. It saves the marina. We maintain the marina. It's on, you know, the water is ours. So I think we just got to negotiate and ask for it back for $1.
Well, I'd like test. I'd like to start by correcting the one little thing, and that's the water is actually owned by the Hamilton Port Authority, managed in conjunction with the LaSalle Park Marina. I'd like to work with all three parties, Hamilton, Burlington, and the Port Authority, to get all things in our court so that we can secure it for the future. Heck, I went to Aldershot High School, and half of my gym was right around LaSalle Park. So I'm seeing it back and forth every week. We need to work together to get the negotiation, and I think my experience in Ottawa and my experience in Burlington at the International Youth Leadership Convention makes me a great candidate to do that. Thank you.
Andrew.
Okay, so what would I do to secure the Cell Park for Burlington? Well, first, Burlington leases the Cell Park. We maintain it, keep it up to date. It's a beautiful park. But for me, Hamilton, Burlington always been very good neighbors. You know, works well. You know, so I don't see a need for the ownership to come back to Burlington. For me, as long as you're good neighbors, which worked well for 99 years, it can work well at least up to this point. You know, just a few days ago, there was a comment about Waterdown joining Burlington. And you know, when that comment is made and the mayor of Hamilton mentions that he was unaware of that, I think that could lead to some tensions in terms of Waterdown, Burlington, LaSalle Park, and Hamilton. But to me, it works well. We're good neighbors. We've always been excellent neighbors with Hamilton and Burlington. So I just think you just keep maintaining that excellent, beautiful park and the marina. And you know, if Hamilton at some point wants to talk about that ownership, I'd be all for that. But right now it works well, and I'd be supporting going forward as it is. Thank you.
Gary.
No matter how that worked out, if we did negotiate something with the city of Hamilton, the folks in Hamilton would definitely accuse their folks of giving it up too cheaply. And the folks here in Burlington would say we spent too much. That's sort of the way it goes. So I definitely agree with Andrew and some of the other gentlemen here that this is working out just fine. Nobody seems to be bent out of shape on this. As long as this low-cost lease, annual lease continues to go on, I think we use it.
Expires in 2 years.
We enjoy the park. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the folks from Hamilton come over too and use LaSalle Park. So I don't see that as really a burning issue at all.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to the next group of questions, and we'll start with Vince. This resident has an issue with traffic and suggests it's a direct result of rapid development with no supporting infrastructure. What would you have done differently, and how can you address traffic congestion in our city?
I'd like to thank the person who gave the question. So yeah, that traffic congestion is a major problem in our city. What I'd like to do is I'd like to move towards moving people out of cars and onto public transportation systems of some sort through a plan. I'd also like to go after non-resident commuters, which are adding to the problem. Another problem is when there's a problem on the QEW or the 403, then people start diverting to our residential streets. We don't have an adequate plan for how to do the detour routes. We do need a connecting transportation corridor that links Waterdown Road to the Aldershot Station. South Service Road extension's got to go in there. Also, I'd like to, we got to redesign our cities around where people can basically live, work, and play within walking or biking distance. Also, every time we do a development, we have to look at how does that development affect our transportation? Are we moving people out of cars and into the public transportation system? Are we building active transportation corridors? That basically, so the idea is to get less people traveling cars. The problem is our city is designed around cars. And which is fine up to a certain point, but we hit the saturation point 15, 20 years ago, and we have to redesign our city around public transportation. Thank you.
Well, I touched on some of this before, but we need to look at better signal technologies. There are traffic signal technologies that are better now, and they can actually look at the flow of people's cell phones on the roads. So they can actually look at how many people are going in different directions and know what speeds, and then you can actually figure out better signal timing that way. So that technology is coming down the pipe, so we should look at that. We do a pretty good job in the region of doing trips down to Union Station. You know, people get on the train, they go down to Union Station, but we don't do a very good job with suburb to suburb trips. So GO Transit should have some kind of bus operation on Dundas. So, and everyone knows, especially the people in Tyne, all the traffic from Waterdown that comes down Brant Street. If we could get a bus service going on Dundas that links all the suburban parts of Burlington, Oakville, Mississauga, maybe even to Etobicoke, we can take some of the pressure off of Brant Street and off of the QEW. And I think it's worth reiterating that we need that South Service Road next to the 403 in Aldershot to take some of the pressure off, and that would go from the GO station to King Road, and the King Road bridge needs to be widened, and of course we need to do the widenings of Plains Road to make it an urban boulevard and give everybody more space. Thank you.
Yeah, what he said. My problem with the transportation system here in the city is that, if I can go from McMaster University to the Queenston Traffic Circle in about 22 minutes, I did it. Why can't I get to Fortino's in that same amount of time? I don't get it. So there's short-term and long-term solutions to this, and if you were at the mayor's debate last night, then you heard them talking about it. Short-term solution is synchronizing the lights, right? During peak hours or high traffic times, you can set the lights up so that the on-demand lights on the side streets aren't triggering lights, that the flow, if you follow the correct speed limit, 43 kilometers or whatever it is an hour, you can actually move on Plains Road and move the traffic along, not faster, smarter. There are, as Kevin mentioned, smarter technologies in regards to the lights themselves, tracking where and when they need to be more accurately portraying the needs of the cars on the system. Getting them off the streets, of course, is nice, but the short-term immediate solution, let's get the South Service Road fixed. Let's get the bridge on King Road over the 403 widened to meet the stopping of the lanes on King Road so that people in the north can get to that service road to get to the GO station. Right? Let's just do it now.
Well, I think we're lucky in Aldershot because we do have, a pilot project coming regarding the technology that Kevin was mentioned. It's going to be tested, I believe, I think next fall. They're going to be, it's going to be installed and it's going to be using the Bluetooth technology to improve the flow of traffic along Plains Road. Again, I agree with some of my colleagues up here that you need to improve your transit as well, because if you have good connecting transit, then more and more people will want to go on the buses. As we get more traffic, this is one of the ways that we can go and alleviate the traffic. Widening Waterdown Road is definitely a must, and that is happening. That's already in the work. But I also think that we need to do traffic differently. We need to plan an evacuation route for when there's problems on the, for any of the highways and everybody comes tunneling down. I know there are evacuation routes now, but they need to be improved and we need to have them regulated so that we can get the traffic through when there's a problem. We are sitting right in the nexus of Southern Ontario, so we are going to continue to have these problems. It's how do we manage them?
Tough being at the end as usual. So I believe that most of the things that we should be doing have been touched on. We certainly need to get at that South Service Road, and I know that takes negotiation, and I really don't know where it's sitting. As I understand it, the developer is waiting for the city, and the city is waiting for the developer. And as much as nobody wants to talk to developers, if we don't talk to them and we don't negotiate with them, we need to understand they are our partner. So I would certainly get on that and get that looked after. I think also we could talk to developers about maybe setting up a shuttle service where they can all contribute for a bus that links going from condo to condo and takes and drops people off at the mobility hub. And because what I'm hearing more than anything is people can't park to go over to the GO station. They're saying we're parking over here, we're getting tickets. We need to be able to get over there and get back and not have to leave our car there where we just get a ticket because there isn't appropriate parking. So for me, I think that would pretty much wrap it up.
Thank you, Arlene. This one goes to Group B, to Marty. First to respond. Cannabis will become legal in less than 2 weeks. Burlington doesn't have a position on retailing. If you were elected, will you vote for or against allowing retail cannabis stores in Burlington, and why?
This is a loaded one. I can tell half the crowd probably thinks one way, the other half thinks the other way. But the time to worry about whether it's coming or not is gone. We know that. The question is, do we opt in for real retail or do we not? And we have the opportunity to opt in, as some of the other communities, Richmond Hill, Markham, I believe Newmarket, have chosen to do. There is a risk. Now you can apparently opt in after 1 year. But the one risk that there is there is that Right now, there's a $40 million fund available to help with the implementation of retail cannabis shops in municipalities. What we don't know, and hope to find out soon, is whether by opting out and then opting in later, are we still eligible for a slice of that pie? And so when you look at some of the associated costs, you're going to have increased policing, you're going to have increased bylaws, there's going to be training, you're going to have to monitor illegal dispensaries. So our costs are going to go up. So do we want to forego a slice of that $40 million by opting in down the road or not opting in at all? I think not opting in at all, and this will kind of answer my question, or answer the question, is that I have kids that are millennials. They're going to get it anyway.
And thank you, Marty. You're likely to cut it back from 2 minutes. Okay, Kelvin.
Yeah, this is a difficult issue. It's new to all of us. Coming in about 2 weeks. I think the vote is January 22nd for this council. That gives us only a short amount of time to really test it out in our market. What I'm hearing is there's something like 400,000 kilograms in storage from these companies that have been growing it, and they think they're short of supply. So we obviously have a big demand for this in our community. There's people that need it medicinally. There's a lot of benefits that have been proven that help us, and if the governments, the higher governments are legalizing it, it's difficult for us as a community to say no to it. There is provincial funding available for additional policing of it. It's a tough issue. I mean, I've got 5 kids, and they're going to get it from Marty's sons pretty soon. I'm just scared about it. So.
And we'll move on quickly to Taylor.
Am I going to rebuttal on that? I am a millennial. I think Burlington has to say yes to cannabis in Burlington because it's going to be available by post. So it's going to be here. Compared to the state of Colorado, Burlington could bring, relative to the 3% tax, to the 10% tax we'll be doing, $60 million into provincial coffers. We cannot say no to $60 million. I don't think anybody in this room would say no to $60 million. Safety is a huge concern as well. Right now I have a variety of friends who actually do go to Hamilton because Burlington does not have any illegal dispensaries. We need to stop people from driving to get illegal drugs. I've been approached by several business owners in the community, and they refer to this as a generational opportunity. They're looking to bring hundreds of jobs to Burlington. They're looking to open hundreds of stores, and I don't think Burlington should say no to this slice of the pie as that is put. Thank you.
Eric. I'm sorry, Andrew, sorry. I certainly will repeat the question. Cannabis will become legal in less than 2 weeks, and the city of Burlington does not have a position on retailing. If you were elected, will you vote for or against allowing retail cannabis stores in Burlington, and why?
Okay, so first, my personal preference would be to restrict cannabis sales to LCBO, which has the control mechanisms in place to monitor the sales of these types of products. That being said, the provincial government has dictated that it's going to be expanded beyond that. So it becomes a legal commodity as of October 18th. And we want to control through bylaws where this product is sold. So to me, I would want to meet with the municipal neighbors to seek regional consensus because to planning for the implementation of cannabis. because I would want to avoid where you could have black market sales across municipal boundaries. So that would be my position going forward, and I would also seek input from residents, the medical community, and police input. And with that, I would come up with a reasonable policy going forward.
And you have reset the clock. Dead mic.
So that would be my preference, to restrict it as much as possible, but as it is legal, I would seek consensus on a regional basis to make sure that what we're doing here, they're doing in Hamilton, they're doing in Oakville, they're doing in Milton and Halton Hills, to have a regional approach to this, to avoid situations where you have cross-boundary sales of a legal product. And so, to me, seeking consensus from neighboring municipalities, and also seeking input from the medical community and police input. Thank you. And residents.
The whole reason that marijuana is being legalized is to take it out of the underworld revenue stream, and to have it in as many places as is reasonable makes it accessible, so that people aren't going to be likely to go back to their old dealers again. That was the prime motivation in it all. Now, to back that up, of course, there is a revenue stream to the government of Canada, province, to deal with that. And so those things have to be balanced, and certainly we have to look at the safety aspects. From everything I've read and everything I've seen, I don't know if anybody has a real good handle yet on detecting that you're under the influence yet, like we can with alcohol. So those are things that you have to pay attention to. But getting it out of the underworld stream revenue is definitely a good thing, I'm sure.
So if I was elected, I would vote yes. We've been working, my day job is an employee benefits specialist, and we've been working with a lot of our employers on developing drug and alcohol policies for marijuana in the workplace, because they're concerning, in terms of the legalization. So one of the things that I believe, and I think as Gary just said, was we don't want to have a black market in Burlington. And if we can develop a system where people can get their marijuana in a brick and mortar facility, and we can manage it and we can oversee it, I think people will be healthier, and it will also take out the illegal aspect of it. Those are the people that are using it for medicinal purposes. They're still going to be getting their product either online. A number of the insurer companies right now have made agreements. For example, Shoppers Drug Mart has made an agreement with Manulife to provide medical marijuana if it's covered under a group health benefit program. And some of the other insurers now are making agreements with other pharmaceutical dispensaries to be able to get their medical marijuana through that. So I think we need to stay ahead of the curve, and we need to look at the opportunities for revenue for the city.
And thank you, Renee. So we're going to go to closing statements now, and that should bring us almost to 9 o'clock. And what we're going to do, we're going to mix it up a little bit. We're going to start at the far end of the table and work this way. So Kelvin Galbraith, please, your 2-minute closing statement.
Okay, first I'd just like to thank ECOB for hosting this and Mark Carr for being the moderator. Thank you. Also, I'd like to thank all the citizens. It shows that there's a lot of passion here in Ward 1. So thank you all for coming. Also, fellow candidates. These guys have all been working just as hard as I have. We've seen each other's signs everywhere. I've knocked on doors. They've said, "Oh God, another one?" You're one of the 11, yes. So I know everyone here has been working hard, so I'd like to thank them for that. And of course my family. I haven't seen them in about 2 months, so none of them are here because I know they're supporting me, at least I hope so. You guys have a big decision to make. I'm a proven leader. I'm dedicated to this community. I've been the chairman of the Aldershot BIA for the past 11 years as a volunteer, representing the business community on Plains Road. We're a community in transition here in Aldershot. We're losing a lot of our retail plazas to condos. It's a real transition that people are uncomfortable with, and I want to fight for the businesses. We need to shop somewhere. We need grocery, we need restaurant, we need pub, we need social places to go to, and that's the missing element that we have in this Aldershot community. I've lived in Ward 1 my whole life. I've worked here for the past 20 years. I've owned the fitness firm on the street. So I'm dedicated, I'm committed. I want this job, and I'd love to get your vote on October 22nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, ECOB. You guys have done a great job getting this out across the city. Across Burlington, issues of over-intensification, traffic, taxes, transportation, and environment resonate with everyone. In addition, Ward 1 presents its own list of unique issues. We've got the Tyndale Quarry. We have 2100 Brand Street. We've got the over-intensification of Plains Road. We have the residual effects of downtown over-intensification on the Maple community. The Georgian Court development, and of course the LaSalle Park Marina decision. That's just to name a few. I've heard your collective voices. Let me assure you that I am not beholden to any parties. You will not see my election signs on properties that are owned by developers. I have not had conversations or made deals with developers to sell commercial property I own. I will hold developers at arm's length and accountable. The voices of the constituents of Ward 1 are my priority now and moving forward. We have 11 candidates before you tonight. This is an important election. Vote for the individual who will represent you with professionalism and integrity at the city and at the regional level. What I bring to you, 25 years of living and raising my family in Ward 1. 23 years as the owner of a small business enterprise. 8 years as the director of the Burlington Chamber of Commerce. Most recent 2 years as chair of the board of directors. This is where I led the rebranding of the chamber. I influenced the launch of the first women's professional network, and I grew the young professional network to the largest and most dynamic group in the chamber. Plus, I have experience advocating and negotiating at all levels of government. A vote for me is a vote for a councillor who tells you what comes before it happens, who works with you and listens to you before decisions are made, and includes you in the decision making. That is how we protect the neighborhood we love. So on October 22nd or online, please vote for Marty Stats. Thank you.
Renee Pound.
So I moved to Aldershot in 1966 with my family. My father was a teacher at Aldershot High School. And over the years, I have attended all of the schools in Burlington and Aldershot, Glenview, Maplehurst, and I really love this community. My kids grew up here, and over the last few years, I've worked with Dan Laurie Insurance as an employee benefit specialist. Advocation is probably one of the best things that I do in terms of we're helping people. I want to be able to help people in terms of what they want to see as a future for Ward 1 and what they want to see as an opportunity to make the community better. This community has been a community that has cared for each of us. One of the things that I said is the people of Aldershot and the people of Tangdaga. You know, a lot of times we hear people talk about Aldershot, but Tangdaga is an important element of what goes on in Ward 1. And I really believe that the people up in Tangdaga with the quarry have really been let down by what's been going on in City Hall. It's become a political football, and nobody wants to take charge of it. I think that a lot of us have to really start thinking about how people are going to be affected with the quarry and what we can do to help them. The other thing I find is that when I talk to people in Tangdaga is their children are coming down to Aldershot to go to school. But at the end of the day, if they stay for programs, they can't get back. They don't have a bus to get back there. And we need to be able to connect the communities together. I think that going forward, this community can be a wonderful community, but we need to work together and we need more citizen engagement.
The reason I entered into this campaign for city councilor was to bring a higher level of confidence to both the decision-making and the execution of all this municipality does. Many of the residents who have accessed my website have expressed their astonishment at the ongoing property damages to over 60 ravine properties, while the cause was entirely the actions of the City of Burlington. Then to have also accessed a similar situation where the Scarborough Golf and Country Club was awarded $3.5 million by the courts for similar damages in the 1980s, which was caused when the City of Scarborough discharged the storm sewer into the creek beside this golf course. The proposed 230 townhouse development by National Homes at 2100 Brant Street, with only single-car garages, no on-street parking, while adjacent to some really fine homes in Tyandaga, this will just degrade those homes' values and dramatically increase Brant Street traffic. The comment from National Homes in their last meeting was that City of Burlington told them to increase the density. This development must be reconfigured with two-car garages, some single-family homes, and both on-street visitor parking and a playground for these families. Ongoing development of multi-story buildings on Plains Road must recognize that many of these new residents have downsized from homes in Burlington as well as from Mississauga and Toronto to be close to family. And as such, new residents' lifestyle allow them to use the streets in off-peak hours while contributing to the local economy.
Thank you. Andrew Paul Jordan.
All right, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to the engaged citizens of Burlington for our moderator tonight, Mr. Carr, for fellow candidates for participating, and for the residents here tonight for attending this evening. So let's review. I'm Andrew Jordan, and I will listen, I will learn, and I will communicate. I live in Ward 1. I will have the same daily living experiences that you do. I'm self-funding, so there's no outside influences except the residents of Ward 1. I will listen. Experiences, I bring over 25 years of teaching, almost 7 years of private sector business planning. In education, I bring a Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics, bachelor's degree in economics, bachelor's degrees in education. This combination of experience and education will bring new critical thinking and communication skills to City Council. My campaign priorities: support growth, but smart growth, control taxes, review spending, invest in infrastructure, transit, smart technologies for signals, more affordable housing for seniors, subsidized housing for those in the community in need. And the fifth one, protect our environment, protect green spaces, protect Spencer Smith Park, include conservation, halt, and development proposals. In conclusion, I'm Andrew Jordan. I will listen, I will learn, and I will communicate with you, the residents of Ward 1 and of Burlington. On October 22nd, I ask for your support to vote for Andrew Jordan and to elect Andrew Jordan as the next Ward 1 City and Regional Councillor. Thank you and good evening.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank ECOB, all my fellow candidates, and especially everybody in the hall and the back room there. Really, I think we need to work on improving transportation in Burlington. We need to allow for better timing of cycles, to allow more vehicles to pass through cycle. We need to make bus routes more efficient so that they go from a place where a person wants to be to a place where somebody wants to go. We need to focus on creating smart, linear routes for transportation so that they go down main routes and people can actually take them. As the population grows, I think we need to increase with it. To this end, I support future development of townhouses, apartments, and condos up to 6 stories. I'll put forward motions to ensure that a council vote will be needed for anything proposed larger than that. Currently, the City of Hamilton does own LaSalle Park, and it is leased and maintained by the City of Burlington, and the current contract ends during the next council's term. I would work for any group, support any community association to secure the park for everybody in the future. It's true, my fellow candidates may have more experience than me in years. Please don't hold that against them. I have the experience from Ottawa, where I became a parliamentary volunteer and then intern to the Minister of International Trade. And I believe I have the experience that we need moving forward. I hope I can have your support tonight when you go home and vote. And remember, citizens of Ward 1, vote more in than out.
So first I'd like to thank Mark Carr for moderating. I'd like to thank Maria Adcock and the Citizens of Burlington and the East Plains United Church for hosting this event. And thank you everybody for coming out and participating in a democratic process. That's very important. This is a short opportunity to get to know all of us, but you don't know everything about us, and I recommend that you visit all of our websites. We all have websites and learn more about us. Some things that I never got a chance to touch on, but it's on my website, on my brochures at the back. You can find out more information about it. But things like taxes on pretend farms and vacant property rebates and reducing rental rates, poverty issues and food for life, electoral reform, placing quality of life over quantity of people. This ward is the home to 48 endangered species. And it's never mentioned in any election things. This is something to be proud of, something that should be taken care of. Climate change is the issue of our time. And so I've got some really good ideas on how to fight and adapt to climate change at the municipal level. I also believe that we have a right to know about local sources of pollution, and that local sources of pollution should be paying for that, and that we should also be using that money to try to reduce pollution in our environment. Cancer is now the #1 killer of people now. I have talked about consensus-based decision-making, but there's no way I can cover how that works in such a short period of time. But I do recommend that you can check my website to find more about it. But I'm not running to empower myself, city staff, or developers. If I'm elected, I'm going to use the consensus-based decision-making process to empower you. Also, nothing you need to know about me, so I'm not about power, and I'm also not about money. I have led a very successful career. I pledge to donate 50% of my net income, if elected, to environmental and anti-poverty charities. And I challenge other candidates across the Halton region to do the same thing. Please check out my website. It's for ward1.ca. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank everyone for the organization and everybody that showed up, because I know you've got a big decision here. We've heard about all the issues tonight, so I'm not going to go over them all. I think you've heard them from everybody pretty well. I just wanted to say this, that I feel that experience matters and building trust matters. So here's what makes me different. I've got over 30 years experience as a full-time property manager and administrator, and this has given me in-depth knowledge of land processes and all the stages of development. which are directly beneficial in assessing the types of development and overseeing the needs of the wards are met. I am the only candidate in the group that has a proven voice with governance experience in municipal role and have had the trust of this ward to be elected 3 times. For 11 years, I've worked diligently as a school trustee, making difficult policy decisions. I have the skills and public service experience necessary to represent you now as your counselor. I believe in strong communication, full disclosure, and I know how to advocate. I've had solid training in regulatory legislation, conflict of interest, ethical and moral standards, strategic planning, and I have the foresight to move forward. I know how to work collaboratively. My respected work track record cuts across all sections of individuals in government, and so there's no barriers to me in speaking to any of them. I'm honored and humbled to have the endorsement of community leaders like Louise Cook and Doug Leggett, who are pillars in our city. I will work for all residents in Ward 1, from the Beach Strip to Tyandaga, Aldershot, and the Maple area. Also, let's not forget we belong to the region. So, please visit my website at irvineworksforyou.com, and on October 22nd, please help me to help you make the changes we all want to see. Thank you.
Okay, it's getting late and people are getting restless, I can see that, and people need to get home to babysitters. I have lived in Ward 1 for 36 continuous years. I've raised my families here. Both my daughters went to the local schools, Maplehurst and Aldershot. Ward 1 is my passion. I've worked in community development roles at United Way, at Habitat for Humanity, and I'm used to working with a number of different people at the table, businesses, developers, community, churches, not-for-profit. That's what I do. I'm a community builder. And when the thing that got me to run in this election was I knew that Aldershot was at a tipping point. And I believe we need to talk to people and talk to the developers to find out what it is they want, what it is we need. That's why it's vital that we have a community improvement plan. It's vital that we continue to work towards transit and growth. I believe that Burlington is a great city. And when anybody ever asks somebody from Aldershot where they come from, they never say Burlington, they say Aldershot. But we have other communities in Ward 1, such as Maple, who's feeling very left out and want to go to Ward 2. They told me that loud and clear. And also Tyandaga. Tyandaga was built by developers. There is no community space there, except for the golf course, which is another thing. I would like to have the golf course remain a public course and not sold to developers. I believe I have the skills and the passion to be the voice for Ward 1. I have worked with my neighbors to build community in the Alderfest, in the Aldershot Community Honor Ball, and a number of various communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So there's a lot of talk about, our strengths as leaders. Obviously, we're leaders because that's why we're sitting up here. We want to take the city of Burlington to the next stage. We want to see growth continue properly and for our interests, not for other people's interests. I started serving this community in '95 when then Mayor Walkowicz called and said, do you want to get involved with rebuilding LaSalle Park Pavilion? My wife and I said yes, and we were very involved in that, and we have a pavilion. It's not because of an individual, it's because of the community. The community is the important thing here. That's what you're voting for, that's what you're supporting, that's what we're all working towards. We would all have a slightly different vision on the same issues, but what I'm telling you is that right now we're at a critical point. We need somebody at council who's been working for you for a long time, that knows the issues, that understands things, that's in the community, that can vote for themselves, I've been here my entire life, and I do not intend to ever leave this community. Ward 1 is a great place to be, it's a great place to raise our kids, and it's a great place to stay as we age. On the 22nd of October, or anytime between now and then, you can go ahead and vote. My mother already voted. I know I can leave there for a few minutes, but anyways. We need to make sure that you get out and vote, that you talk to your neighbors, you tell them to vote. You've got 11 good choices here. Let's make sure that everybody in the community votes for somebody. I prefer you vote. I'm just saying.
You know, I am fortunate that I was born and raised here in Ward 1 and continue to live here. I feel like a pretty lucky person. But why am I here tonight? My neighbors actually suggested that I run. You know, neighbors said, well, Kevin, you're interested in municipal affairs. You're a trained urban planner. Why don't you run? And I gave it a lot of thought. I never thought of myself as a politician, but I wanted to make a contribution. So here I am. I actually began my community work actually in 1992. I should beat you. But it was actually during that time when Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka were on the loose. And my friends and I at Aldershot High School, we wanted to do something. So we organized a Violence Against Women conference, and all the other high schools came to attend. And at the time, my friends and I were pretty serious about training in martial arts, and we organized self-defense classes for women. So that's how I got started in my community work. I was just a kid. We just wanted to do something. Now, voter turnout is just dismally low, and voter apathy and cynicism is very high. So, and council members are often viewed as agents of business and developers. So, I can assure you, my interests are only in serving the community. And I just wanted to talk to you briefly about taxes. I think property taxes should be at, the increase should be kept within the rate of inflation. But I actually think that they should be lowered because we're asked to do too much with the burden on our property taxes. So things need to be uploaded to the province, like education, as 20% of our tax bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank all of the candidates for their participation tonight. I want to thank the audience. Democracy is not dead in Ward 1. Thank you to ECOG for all of their efforts. I know how challenging it was at times. Drive safely. Good night.